Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Welcome to this monumentous occasion. Sorry, I'm still drinking my coffee. As we celebrate the 75th anniversary of Cornwall Manor. Today, we gather to honor and reflect upon the rich history and remarkable journey that has brought us to this significant milestone. For 75 years, Cornwall Manor has provided housing, services, and amenities for 2,684 individuals who have made our community their home. Today is an opportunity to look back as we remember the visionaries who laid the foundation, the challenges overcome, and the triumphs achieved. This program is not just a tribute to the past, but also a celebration of the enduring spirit and resilience that continues to drive us forward. We will revisit the pivotal moments, hear the stories from those who witnessed history firsthand, and gain insights into the legacy that has been built over the decades. I'm especially grateful to those that will be speaking today, and they are listed on the program handout. I'm also grateful to those who were instrumental in researching and making this presentation possible. I would also like to thank Sherry Showers, Life Engagement Coordinator, for co-chairing the 75th Anniversary History Subcommittee with me. And this is where this idea came from, a presentation about our founders and where Cornwall Manor came from. So for all of you involved, thank you. So whether you're a history enthusiast or just curious about how we've arrived at the present, this program will answer those questions. Thank you for joining us today for this celebration of history, heritage, and hope. Let's embark on this journey together, honoring the past and looking forward to a future filled with promise and possibility. John?
The Reverend Levi H. Zerr was a Methodist leader in eastern Pennsylvania when, at age 52, he saw the Buckingham estate in Cornwall and visualized a home for God's senior citizens. There was a yawning gap between his vision and the reality of purchasing the property. Nevertheless, he believed it was of God, and despite all obstacles, it would come to pass. Levi Zerr's vision took form during the years immediately following the Second World War. Factories that had made tanks were now making cars. Methodist congregations were leaving Philadelphia and resettling in mushrooming suburbs. Why not, Zerr wondered, carry a Philadelphia Methodist tradition into a place where aging people could live with trees? He knew that Philadelphia Methodism had a tradition of supporting benevolent institutions, such as a home for the aged and a hospital. So when he proposed a home for aging people in Cornwall, he was carrying a tradition of Christian service out from a city of screeching subways to a country of singing sparrows. The initial portion of what is now Cornwall Manor was owned by William Freeman, who had inherited it from his aunt, Margaret Buckingham. He remembered that she had said that if the property were sold, it should be sold to someone who would preserve the traditional dignity. In the autumn of 1948, Freeman was confident that his aunt's wish would be satisfied if he sold the property to the newly incorporated Methodist Church home at Cornwall, represented by its board of directors. The agreed price was $20,000. Freeman included antiques which, when auctioned, reduced the amount to be raised by Zerr and the board to around $7,000. Zerr originally visualized a home for aging people without any specific reference to clergy. This vision expanded early in 1949 when the Methodist Conference's Bradley Fund, which had been created to provide retirement security for Methodist ministers, their wives, and their widows, agreed to pay for remodeling the mansion. Soon the large Victorian house had dormitory-style bedrooms and down-the-hall bathrooms. By the autumn of 1949, the Methodist Church home at Cornwall was ready to seat its first residents round the common table. New residents signed life care contracts in which they turned the major portion of their assets over to Cornwall Manor. In return, Cornwall promised them a secure and peaceful place to live for their remaining days. Sitting at his desk, Levi Zerr tabulated assets and liabilities, translated them into hopes and fears for the future of Cornwall Manor, then added God to the column of assets. Also seated at his desk, he looked into the eyes of people applying for admission, saw their fear of growing old alone and perhaps in poverty, saw their hope too, hope for a place to live out their days in safety and comfort and peace. Then, having added God to the column of assets, he sought ways to construct a community, both tangible and intangible, that would allay the fears and augment the hopes of its residents. One year into the history of Cornwall Manor, Levi Zerr invited women of the Methodist churches of Eastern Pennsylvania to form the Golden Cross Society to provide financial support principally for medical care. 4 years after the society was founded, the women of 148 Methodist congregations, most of them in the Philadelphia area, had accepted Zerr's invitation, organized auxiliaries, and started raising funds. In 1954, they paid $1,924 for doctor's fees, $906 for drugs and medical supplies, and $295 for linens and gowns. Basically, they covered the running costs of the infirmary. From the first bazaars held on the porch of the mansion to the present day, bazaars have been a major source of income, along with contributions from the auxiliaries and the gifts of individuals. Eventually, the society opened what are now the Manor Shop and the Treasure Trove. In 1963, Cornwall residents asked to be involved as contributors. Today, residents make up the vast majority of the society's members and leaders. The name was changed in 1968 to Cornwall Manor Society. What did not change was Zerr's name for the society, the Society of Golden Deeds, deeds that underpin health and benevolent care. Levi Zerr had a vision of a place that would provide peace of mind and lifetime security for God's senior citizens. For this vision to become buildings and services, Zerr had to manage the things that won't stay managed: placing orders, paying bills, raising money, recruiting and training staff. He also had to make prudent, long-range decisions, such as imagining new buildings, ensuring their funding, breaking ground for their construction, supervising their use. The estate's bank barn became the core of Freeman Hall. Zerr realized early on that cottages for married couples would enlarge his vision. The carriage house was turned into an apartment building, Bradley Hall. When Cornwall Manor was 5 years old and still struggling for its very existence, Levi Zerr proposed a purchase that prompted the board of directors to call him a wild dreamer. He championed the acquiring of a 7-acre hill overlooking the campus. The price tag was $50,000. True, the hill had a large house on it that would accommodate new residents. But where was Zerr to find the money? He shared his vision with Arthur Flanagan, a Philadelphia businessman, who listened, then said that he and his wife would purchase the property and gift it to Cornwall Manor. Named Grandview Manor, it began receiving residents in 1954. Today, this hill is under the homes of people living on the Grandview and Treetop circles. Less than a decade after Cornwall Manor opened, Zerr added a health center, assuring residents that they would have infirmary and nursing care. Worship services were held in a room in the mansion until the chapel joined the growing campus. An enclosed walkway made it possible for residents of North Hills, a new apartment building, to walk undercover to the chapel. North Hills was demolished around 2013. Levi Zerr thanked God for the fact that Cornwall Manor did not require a weekly or monthly payment. Persons were admitted on the basis of assignment of assets. They signed over most of what they owned, only retaining a small portion for personal needs. In return, they were guaranteed peace of mind and lifetime security, which included infirmary and nursing care. An early auditor reported that almost 3/4 of the residents could not have been admitted if they had been required to pay a monthly fee. Zerr said that many inquiries had come asking how we can be so generous with our guests and at the same time secure the operation of so large a project. Our answer is that God must be well pleased with the way we do it. November 1963 was a month of transition for Cornwall Manor, a month of tragedy for America. Levi Zerr retired as administrator and was succeeded by Price Collins. President Kennedy was assassinated. In the midst of this tragedy and transition, there were two certainties. Certainty that America was entering a time of instability and rapid change. Certainty that Levi Zerr's vision of the future of Cornwall Manor would live on as a place providing peace of mind and lifetime security for God's senior citizens. Live on because God was living in it.
During the period from the mid-1960s to the late 80s, Cornwall Manor was in transition. Levi Zerr had passed the baton of management to Price Collins, who handed it on to Donald Miller, who entrusted it to Harry Schimmel. Handoffs, no matter how carefully practiced, run the risk of being fumbled. Certainly, fumbling characterized American society and the economy during the administrations of Collins, Miller, and Schimmel. In the 1960s, there were protests against the Vietnam War, against authority figures and institutions, and there were demonstrations for a range of civil rights and acceptance of personal choices. Many Americans felt that the societal and political hands, even the religious hands that had steadied their lives, were fumbling. At the same time, Medicare and Medicaid were beginning to provide more and better health care for older Americans. This increased longevity drove up the cost of caring for people who were living longer. So Cornwall Manor's leaders needed to avoid fumbling as they sought to balance income and expenses, enmeshed as they were in a society reeling from one shock after another. The American economy, going into the 1970s and beyond, was on a trampoline. A jump of rapid growth, a fall into recession. A jumping stock market, a falling stock market, periods of high, low, and stable inflation. This trampoline economy made fumbling even more of a risk for Cornwall's administrators as they considered long-term financial commitments, such as borrowing money for construction projects. Cornwall Manor's management faced two risks in this trampoline economy: the risk of continuing to write life care contracts and the risk of incurring debt for new buildings. Life care contracts threatened the financial stability required to provide for the lifetime care promised by these contracts. This was because the sum of money paid by residents at admission could run out long before they died. So management decided to replace life care contracts with a monthly fee-for-service plan, a decision whose wisdom was underscored by the bankruptcy of a group of Methodist retirement communities in California. They had failed to respond in time to the danger posed by life care contracts. Another consequence of the California bankruptcy was a decision to change the legal relationship between the United Methodist Church and its related institutions, such as retirement homes and hospitals. These were now defined as separate legal entities, meaning that if an institution got into financial difficulty, the church as a whole could not be held accountable. In 1989, Cornwall Manor of the United Methodist Church changed its legal name to Cornwall Manor in mission with the Eastern Pennsylvania Conference of the United Methodist Church. Earlier, we noted two risks facing Cornwall's management in the period of financial instability that began in the late 1960s and ran into the mid-'80s. The first was the risk of failing to balance operating expenses and projected income, the danger posed by life care contracts. The second was the risk of incurring debt for campus expansion during a time of high interest rates and a poor economy. So, management prudently decided to pause construction. No building projects were authorized between 1970 and 1985. Before this construction pause, a number of projects were completed, beginning with Corson Hall in 1966. The new food center, completed a year later, is now the maintenance building. The Westwood and Gateway apartment buildings made it possible to welcome many new residents. The circular addition to the health center provided 56 additional beds and was the last new construction for the 15-year period beginning in 1970. Donald Miller's tenure as administrator was brief, 1976 to 1980, yet there were significant developments. An endowment fund was established to help make Cornwall Manor's future more financially secure. The former office building of the mining company was purchased and eventually became a children's center. The first 2 residents were elected to Cornwall's Board of Directors. Several meetings of residents in the autumn of 1978 led to the formation of the Residents Association. Donald Miller identified its purpose as being a much-needed channel for communications and to advance service projects and campus life. As this association developed, committees were created to bring together residents and members of the staff to share mutual concerns such as food service, healthcare, and maintenance. Trees and the environment receive a committee's close attention, including a recent field trip with a stop at a covered bridge. Residents are encouraged by the association to participate in a wide range of activities and volunteer opportunities both on and off campus. Harry Schimmel, unlike his predecessors, all of whom were clergy, had for-profit business experience. In addition, just before coming to Cornwall, he had been the business administrator for 5 years of a Methodist annual conference, so he was familiar with the management of nonprofit organizations. Early on, he placed the endowment fund, its funding and investments, on a more solid footing. The trampoline economy, which had made the management of Cornwall's finances challenging for 15 years, stabilized in the mid-1980s. This allowed Schimmel to lift the pause on building projects. Levi Zerr's vision of greater things to come began to be realized anew. In 1985, Grandview Manor was razed, making way for building single and duplex houses on the ridge. The first phase of Laurel Place, completed in 1986, increased the number of apartments, making it possible for the number of residents to grow. Laurel Place Phase 2, in addition to offering more apartments, connected the 2 Laurel Place buildings to the community center, dining room, medical office, shop, and bank. Schimmel's administration closed with the establishment of a fund in his honor, designated to provide benevolent care. Levi Zerr had a vision of Cornwall Manor as a place that would provide peace of mind and lifetime security for God's senior citizens. His vision was tested when life care contracts threatened to undermine the very financial stability needed to support peace of mind and lifetime security. Management avoided this risk by ceasing to write life care contracts and by pausing new construction. So Cornwall Manor was once again, in the late 1980s, visualizing and realizing, in Zerr's words, greater things to come.
For 33 years, Stephen Hassinger and Lee Stickler stood on the shoulders of Levi Zerr and expanded his vision of a place providing peace and security for senior citizens. Though Hassinger was the administrator for 30 of these years, Stickler was the main key man in finance. This combination of talents was essential for realizing Zerr's vision of greater things to come. Greater things started coming in the late 1990s and continued into the 2000s. The first of these was Gatehouse Lane, which was followed by one construction project after another, each signaling an expanding Cornwall Manor. Swimming became available to Cornwall Manor residents with the construction of the Wright Family Wellness Center. A shuffleboard in Bishop's Park and a bocce court near the mansion attract happy competitors. Around the millennial year of 2000, when doomsayers were predicting the end of the world, management's vision of development of the woods became the foundation of today's Cornwall Manor. New homes in the woods were paid for before construction began. Once they were occupied, the monthly fees provided cash flow that supported Cornwall's future financial security and development. Also, woods appealed to a growing demographic, people looking for a well-designed, well-built home in a close-to-nature retirement community. Cornwall Manor transferred the portion of the rail trail that it owned to the Lebanon Valley Rail Trail Organization while retaining the rights for residents and maintenance equipment to go back and forth between the campuses. This was a wise decision. Now, most of the cost of maintenance and liability insurance, especially that pertaining to the bridge, belongs to the Lebanon Valley Rail Trail. Before construction began in the woods, the old carriage house was expanded to create Bradley Hall. The woods, which was key to the vision of an expanding future for Cornwall Manor, began to take shape in the middle of the first decade of the 21st century. The carriage house, the newest independent living building on the Buckingham campus, has 18 apartments. The building of a new health center came at precisely the right moment. If it had not been built when it was, Cornwall Manor would not be able to afford it today. A new section of Corson Hall increased the number of personal care apartments. We have just watched what Levi Zerr predicted, the coming of better things to come for Cornwall Manor. This expansion was not a leisurely walk for Cornwall's management, but a marathon on terrain roughened by the economy, by American society, by technology, and by COVID-19. Graphs of the economy reveal hills and valleys of rough terrain during the years when Hassinger and Stickler were Cornwall Manor's administrators. The stock market jumped up in 1985, fell down in 2002. Between 2006 and 2008, global recession was the worst since the 1930s. In these unstable economic times, Cornwall's management continued building a strong financial backbone by working with outside consultants to invest properly, with the result that expansion could continue, though there were changes in the plans for developing the campus and occasional delays in new construction. The divide in American society so wide today began to open in the 1990s. The gap between rich and poor expanded. 9/11 put paid to the assumption that terror could not fly into American airspace. Sharply differing opinions about same-sex marriage and abortion widened the crack, and political animosities threatened to divide the American house against itself. America was rough terrain, a house divided, yet Cornwall Manor, thanks to sound management, remained a place of undivided comfort and peace. Cornwall Manor debuted on the World Wide Web in 1998. Doing so, it entered the world of technology, a world in which the best of times and the worst of times are the times in which we live. In the worst of times, internet scammers prey on reputations, assets, and lives. In the best of times, Zoom makes it possible for families separated by thousands of miles to be together. In the worst of times, the internet is a conveyor belt for malice in many guises. In the best of times, Cornwall Manor's management uses technology as a marketing tool to expand the area from which potential residents can be drawn. And technology enables staff members to contact current residents through alerts, wellness calls, notices of events, and dining room menus. Early in the COVID years, 2019 through 2022, Lee Stickler and Cornwall Manor's staff determined to take COVID very seriously. The best-known practices were promptly put into place. Eventually, vaccination clinics were organized. Expenses mounted, face masks, test kits, protective clothing worn and discarded, plastic containers for food, and on and on. In due course, a grant from the federal government offset many of these mounting costs. Nothing, however, could offset COVID's impact on the physical, mental, and emotional health of management and staff. The year 2022, as COVID was losing its grip, the organic farm planted and harvested its first produce, marking one more step in the expansion of the campus. From the days of Levi Zerr, the administrators of Cornwall Manor have stood on his shoulders at the center of campus life, following his example of prudent management and carrying forward his vision of greater things to come. Now their offices symbolize this role. Management has moved into the expanded Freeman Hall, the center of the Cornwall community, for nearly 75 years.
As Levi Zerr sat at his desk in the mansion 75 years ago, he was totally engaged in bringing to earth his vision of a place that would provide peace of mind and lifetime security for God's senior citizens. When he extended his vision to those who would stand on his shoulders, he said that what he had achieved was but the beginning of greater things to come. Harry McConnell now stands on Levi Zerr's shoulders and focuses on greater realizations of Zerr's vision. Iris Alster's 100th birthday was not a once-and-done celebration. Whenever Harry McConnell saw her in the dining room after that special day, he greeted her with a hug. One happy hour afternoon, he could have looked down upon a seated resident as he greeted her. Instead, he went down on his knees and looked her in the eye. McConnell's vision of the future begins with the new clubhouse and the spaces it will provide to enhance community life. Levi Zerr's vision of Cornwall Manor was like a poem, a heartfelt composition presenting a place where people growing older could live in comfort and security and peace. Each of his successors, standing on his shoulders, wrote their own poem, their vision of the future of Cornwall Manor. All this is Cornwall Manor's history. My history too, because Levi is my grandfather. He was a science and nature man, loved his rose bushes and the beauty and miracles of the seasons. He valued all living things. He also had a tremendous faith in God. Always positive that he was protected, no matter what hardship or tragedy or illness he or my grandmother Hazel faced. I would call him a loving and patient man, very easy conversationalist. I know he especially loved telling jokes or riddles and making his 3 grandchildren laugh, and of course we would beg for more. He especially loved chatting with his grandchildren. He often had a $5 bill ready to give each of us after we showed him our report cards or had a special accomplishment. He was very kind and complimentary to each of us. More especially, he was very delighted when a grade was improved from the prior marking period. He always reminded us to try our personal best. He complimented and encouraged us. His unwavering faith and his strong optimism and his pie-in-the-sky dreams were noticeable to me at an early age. I think some of that has rubbed off on my brothers and on me. He was a role model to his grandchildren. Let's see. During our childhood, we were often privileged to watch Cornwall Manor blossom. As young children, we watched our grandfather's vision evolve into reality. The campus looked different and better each time we would come to visit our grandparents. My grandfather's vision came true thanks to the input of an influential team of masterful colleagues working with him. Their dreams and visions evolved into today's beautiful Cornwall Manor that is a picture-perfect home to many fortunate residents. I am sure he is beaming with pride, probably some disbelief, thanks to that singular vision and the input of many masterminds over the decades. And in the near future, my husband and I will be moving into the carriage house. We will enjoy living with my grandfather's vision.
When you think of vision, some of the key factors that must be considered. Never forget your past and where you came from. What do you want your organization to accomplish in the next 5, maybe 10 years? How are you going to get there? Define your organizational culture. And what is it that sets your organization apart from your competition? As we look at our vision, some of the thoughts that we have now and going into the future, make sure your vision aligns with your mission, your core values, and your goals. We are a caring Christian community, and we continue to do God's work. CARES, our core values: compassion, respect, attitude, excellence, and service will always remain. Next, create a culture where your employees want to work and your residents want to live. We do need to be an employer of choice. There has to be a focus on employment over these next 5 years, maybe even longer. Continue to find ways to enhance your salary benefits. Hire well. It's one of the most important things we do. As we bring people into your lives to do the job that we need to have done, it's so important. Continue to create a culture of kindness and caring. That is something that means an awful lot to our team. We are here for our residents. This is about living. It's not about retirement. We are trying to find ways to have our residents live. And it's exciting, and we're excited about the future for that. We need to continue to be good stewards. Throughout these presentations, you've heard so much work has been done, but you wouldn't be able to do this work if you didn't have the resources. We have to really work hard in a very, very tough environment, especially the last few years, to stay on course and be good stewards. I'm proud to say our endowment fund now is almost at $40 million. And we are blessed that has cash reserves that are well over $30 million. That's amazing in this industry. Next, we got to continue to attract good board members. I can't tell you how vital this is. Just like we need to hire well, we need to have good board members. Remember, our board and our senior team are the driving force for our strategic planning. You have to have board members that understand your industry, know Cornwall Manor, and be able to put in the time and effort needed. We are blessed to have a wonderful board of directors. Some of them are in this room today as our residents, the 3 residents that we have. We need to continue to work at that. That is something that's really, really important. We have to find ways to bring our campuses together. I stress this, we are a community. I think we've made progress, but there's a lot more that we can do. But some of the things, simple, the Artful Connection program. What a wonderful program where we've been able to bring people from all different campuses. The happy hour event we do, we're seeing over 100 residents from all over the campuses come. And our farm. Who would think that a farm could be such a wonderful thing for resident engagement and bringing people from this campus over to there and from the woods to the farm? We're very fortunate. Our commitment to wellness. This starts with our wellness office. I think it's really important. When I first came, we had this office. It was called the VPO, Visiting Physician's Office, and I was struggling to understand what that was. It's a wellness office, and it's there for our residents. All right, and we're going to continue to work on that to make that office better. And you know what? As we talk about the next important part of our vision, aging in place, that wellness office will be the main part there. But so is fitness. We want our residents to be able to stay active. The person we have in charge now, Melissa, she is working really hard to try to get all of you involved. She's even got us involved in the water volleyball. I saw that picture and I thought, yes, that was the day we lost to the residents. The next is aging in place. We want to find ways to keep our residents in their home. But I stress this, that's if they want and if that's if they desire that. I've had a couple residents say to me, I moved here to go through all phases. And that is, first of all, that's rare, but we're glad to hear that. All right, but we know that most of you want to stay in your homes as long as you possibly can. That is our job to find a way to do that, and we're working hard at it. Support our local community. We're blessed to be part of the Cornwall and Lebanon communities. We have a duty to give back and get involved. There are people in our local community that may not ever be able to live at Cornwall Manor, but we can still find a way to reach out and touch them and help them in their long-term care journey. That is really important. Recently a lot of discussions come up about support groups, but what a wonderful way to help people in the community. A dementia support group, there may be a couple out there that, they could never move here to Cornwall Manor, but they could come here to our support group and get the help that's needed and the support that's needed. We have a duty there. We're going to get involved more. I will tell you, the farm is another example. Vicki does a wonderful job of talking about our farm and getting our farm involved in other aspects of this community. We are providing vegetables that are serving in the underserved population here in Lebanon. What a wonderful thing. We're starting to get involved with some boards. We need to do that to support our community. We'll continue. Growth. The one thing you saw here is that there was a lot of growth. We're going to continue that. First of all, we're fortunate that we can. We also know that there is a huge need for senior housing. Brooke and I had a meeting last week with Ziegler. They're an institution that do an awful lot of work with all the retirement communities. And we were telling them how we're getting ready to start a 36 apartment building. And she said, can you make it bigger? But we're going to find ways to grow. We're going to work hard with our marketing team. Jen and that team, they do a wonderful job of bringing people to our community. And we need to listen and find different options. Not everybody wants the same thing. So we're looking at different options for senior housing, and we're excited about it. I wish I could tell you that we already know our vision for skilled nursing, but we don't. but I can tell each of you that we're working hard at it. Skilled nursing has changed from when it started many, many years ago to where it's at today, but just in the last 5 years, we've seen dramatic changes. We're out there looking. We're seeing what other communities are doing. We're hearing from ideas. We're talking to architects to hear what others may be doing. Yesterday, we were out looking at a community that didn't have to do with skilled nursing, that was independent living, but we're doing our homework. What we do know is that skilled nursing is changing. The need for it, because of aging in place and the desire to stay in your home longer, won't be needed as much. That's a fact. But we're trying to see what else can we do. You know, maybe we branch into the assisted living world. You know, we have that ability. The nice thing about our healthcare center, it was built in 4 distinct neighborhoods. So that allows us to be creative and do things. But I want to say, I've had residents call me, stop me, and say, don't get rid of skilled nursing care. We're not. I do believe there is a need for it. I just don't believe there's a need for 96 beds. So we're going to work hard. So stay tuned on that, and you'll hear more about our vision there. The next part is we never stop telling our story. You know, there's a CEO local in this area I have a lot of respect for. Yes, they have a wonderful community. And I remember being on all the calls for APG or for PAMFA and Leading Age, and he was always talking about his community. And they're always saying, we want to share with you what they're doing at this community. And I used to hang up and think, God, I'm so tired of hearing about that community. But you know what? I went to see him years ago to kind of pick his brain, because I did admire what he was doing. I also recognized how important it was. What was really nice is we're starting that process. I think we're doing a really good job of getting out there. Most of you know we presented at Leading Age conference in PA. We presented at Rodell at their conference, and we'll be presenting in Nashville in just a couple of weeks at the Leading Age National Conference. That CEO, I knew he would be at our presentation for the farm, because it's something they don't have, and we do. And I told our team he'd be there. But one of the best compliments is when he came up to say to us, I have to tell you, a lot of people are talking about Cornwall Manor. And that meant an awful lot to me and I think our team. But we got to continue to tell our story. I think we have a wonderful story to share. We have a wonderful community, and we need to let people know about it. I'll conclude by saying this is a very competitive market. We're surrounded by wonderful communities that do a very good job of taking care of their residents and employees. I can find so many good things to say about the communities that surround us. But I also can tell all of you, we are the very best. We really are. And not many are in our position today where we are, and a lot has to go all the way back to the leadership and the people that were here. Never forget, we never look back on the past. We look back on the past, we never forget the past. And the last thing I will say is the future is bright for Cornwall Manor. I'm blessed to have a team that has a lot of energy and is ready to take on anything. I say this to you because, Stacia was up here saying she needed more coffee. This is me. I've never had a cup of coffee in my entire life. I'm ready to go. My wife doesn't know how I do it. When I get up, it aggravates the heck out of her. But I'm always energy. You can tell I'm excited. This is really important to me. It's really important to our team, and it's really important to our board. We're doing really good things, and I mean it. Our future is very bright. So I want to say thank you for coming out. I really appreciate being part of this. A special thanks to John, Daphne, Bob, and Patricia for taking us through that journey. And we're really glad to be here now, Patricia, and I'll tell you, we're going to work hard at it. So thanks a lot, and have a really good rest of the day.